Welcome to Ego Netcast. I am Martin Lindeskog, episode 97. Do you think it's time to celebrate George Washington Day on February 22nd? It was recently the so-called President's Day here. And I think you should read Alan C. Miller's piece, President's Day Perspective on the Nature of Free Press. And I have the following quote from George Washington on March 15th, 1783 on my Facebook page. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. And I will also link to George Washington's Mount Vernon page on the National Gazette that was established in 1791. And the quote is as follows: George Washington's support for a free press and the First Amendment ironically helped to make the National Gazette possible. And that probably was a magazine or gazette similar to today's tabloids and gossips and rumors, and also debates and discussions there. And in this episode, I will also talk a little about my future plans, as I'm now soon will reach my milestone of 100 plus episodes published since I started podcasting in 2006. And I will also include in the show notes links to applications, to blog posts, services, etc., and take them on individual episodes in the near future. I will talk about the author there that wrote this piece, Alan C. Miller. He's on a site called News Literacy Project, and they have a registered name there called Checkology for students to compare facts versus fiction, and how when they do their research papers and so on, how to find the facts instead of the fiction, made up things, to check their sources and double check things. So I will also talk about the service called Parler, probably pronunciation the French one, but it's spelled Parler. And I found out on this service when I was moderating and saw a blog post on different new apps, and have some comments on this new service. I also found out by Lisa Sicard, that I've had on my show here, Inspired to Thrive. She have reviewed a service called Ground News Pro that I will start subscribing to. So you will get the perspective from left to right, so to speak, and also in the middle there. I have used a service called allsides.com in the past, and I see this thing, Ground News Pro. It sounds like a neat idea, and I will test it out and talk about it and adding my 2 cents to the conversation. So also I got contact from a person on LinkedIn talking about Open Talk FM, where we could continue the conversations here on my blog and after published my podcast episodes, and how we could have conversations, discussions, adding the 2 cents, as I said, and using this service called Open Talk FM. I'll check that out. Also, I have in the pipeline new episodes, and I put it in Ulysses, an app. And in January, I was thinking of commentary on Charlie Hebdo. It was happening in January 7th in 2015. So it's 5 years since it happened. And we should never forget that and forgive, and we should stand up for the freedom of speech and your expression, to also use satire, including religion. And I have also linked here from New Ideal, Ayn Rand Institute, Defending Free Speech from Rushdie to Charles and Beyond by Steve Simpson and Tom Bowden. So read that article there. And recently I saw on Snapchat a report from CNBC on deep fake and how you could create a video and overlap with another image and somebody else is talking. So you could fool people thinking that's you or somebody else talking. And recently, a few days ago it was World Radio Day on February 13th. And it's a UNESCO project, so I have some issues with that. And also the theme is so-called diversity. What's that? But I will include a link there to Canadian radio, so you could listen for yourself about World Radio Day. I would say also and include that radio played a big part in freedom that came about from when the countries behind the Iron Curtain and the wall, the Berlin Wall, they couldn't reach information and receive popular music and so on. So then it was started Radio Free Europe and Voice of America and other radio stations there. So radio has played an important role, and I think it will do that in the future also. But now, as you're listening to now this podcast, it's time shifted, so you could listen whenever you want. So we'll talk more about that in the future. Also, could you listen to my podcast everywhere? If you, for example, do an explicit episode, it's said that you are not be able to listen to it in India, and I want to investigate that more for the future. Is it that you can't download the application, or could you go to a website and listen to it anyway? That must be the case, I think. And at the end here, I was thinking about, listen to Apple Music, The Spirit of Radio by the band Rush. So with that, I will take a sip here of Yorkshire tea and talk to you soon again. And now I almost forgot the thing, a call to action. So go to my newsletter service, Lyceum Bulletin on Review, and subscribe to my newsletter there, talking about National Gazette and so on. This is the real deal, Lyceum Bulletin, powered by Review. I will include that in the show notes also. So thanks for your support and for subscribing to my newsletter, Lyceum Bulletin. Cheers.